attendees can hear you as well. Show of hands again, please. If
I'm just going to put the light on, put the curtains.
okay,
lighting.
Okay. Right, so let me just introduce Brother Dawud Price and before he starts. So he's graduated in business administration in the late 1970s, and after a successful but disheartening experience in industry, lived off the land in the 1980s as a self-styled radical Celtic Taoist. I have to leave you to explain this in a bit. He found Islam in the late 1980s, and ever since he has been passionate about social justice, working in diverse areas from the regional markets of Britain to the Gaza Strip. He's been described, again, you might have to tell us by who, as a provocative anarchist, especially in regard to Islam and environment. So it's over to you, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, I don't want to talk too much about myself. If that bio is available to people, they can challenge me on it. The provocative anarchist came from a question and answer session at a university where I delivered very much the same sort of talk as I'm going to do now. If I feel a little bit humbled because we're in the presence of Fazl and Khalid, who's basically been the chief influence for my awareness of Islam and the environment in relation to my passion for social justice generally. And if he was speaking now, you would have three distinct flavors to his delivery. You'd have eloquence, diplomacy, and it would be very thought-provoking. I can give you one of those three. It will be thought-provoking. And I usually do this these presentations, I usually feed off the audience. So I'm trying to connect with people and connect with their hearts. And I don't know, I might know the audience, so I can't see them. I can't see their eyes or their body language. So I've stripped away quite a lot of what I'd normally do in a live situation. So I avoid boring you. And in a way, it's like bullet points. And I would advise people to have a pen and paper. If you have a pen and paper with you, it would be very useful. And for those who haven't, I think this is going to be recorded and I think it'll be available. So what I say will be available. What I'd like to start with is giving you the whole answer to the awareness of Islam and the environment and the future and how it can play a part in for Muslims and non-Muslims alike. And that is just by indicating the book that Sidi Fazlan has just written, because I think this is one of his, the pinnacle, in a way, of all the study and research that he's done on this subject. And I'm just going to give you the title. So it's a plug because it's the answers to a lot of questions about Islam's place in climate crisis. It's called Signs on the Earth. You remember Signs on the Earth, and you Google that, you'll find it. The subtitle is Islam, Modernity and the Climate Crisis, but it's also available on Amazon, amazon.co.uk, Signs on the Earth. Now with that, I'll go into my bullet point, sort of thought-provoking session, and some of the things I just noticed that the Islamic environment features very minimally in it, although the subject matter is definitely linked, and I'm open to challenges as to why. What I usually do is I ask questions at the beginning. I ask, who am I and who are you and what do we have in common? And I'm not asking them to do another bio about myself or to find out that you're a family man or a daughter of this or that or any of the adjectives around you, but just to have you answer the question for yourself. And if you like, decide whether you think you are a created creature or you are an evolved creature, whether you define yourself as somebody that needs to worship anything, or whether you define yourself as the ability to use tools. And what I would suggest is that what we have in common is something that if you have a pen and paper ready, you'll write, because it's a very succinct statement by my teacher, and it always gives, it is a good reference point for all the other content that we're going to talk about. Who are we? What do we have in common? We are nothing but the illusory solidification of events around a light source. We'll park that, we won't go into it, don't question it at the moment. We'll go straight on to the subject. I've been here many times before in talking about environmental issues related and how Islam contributes to them. And I just want to give you some examples of the timing. There was a usury conference in 1987. There was the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. There were various COP talks, and they're still going on throughout time. There was the emergence of the Green Party working group in 1990. There was the Transition Town movement, who I got involved with in 2008. And there was a Religions of the Earth conference by Green Faith in America in 2014, which I attended in New York. And I could go on because there's been many things since that I haven't written down. And we've got to do something different this time, because those initiatives, although they may have kept people going and talking and thinking, have not actually had as much impact as I would like to achieve. I'm not going to give you any science or stats on climate change. Other people might have those, or they might be available just by Googling climate change. I'm not going to talk about climate engineering or outline strategies for mitigation or adaptation, but these words have whole possible seminars that we could talk about. What we have to do as people concerned about this issue, I would say Muslims in a complete Muslim audience, but anybody that's concerned, we have to offer a moral and religious response to immoral global elites. And I'd like to indicate that this is a Dawud versus Goliath situation. We have to do all the stuff that I'm not going to talk about, which you will visit in the sessions after this, but we must also identify and know our enemies. This might be a bit provocative, but I would suggest we have to prepare for war. But now I'd like to flip things on their head, because this is about bullet points and thought-provoking things that will stimulate questions. I'd like to give you a blue sky projection. Flip the whole thing on the head. What this initiative will eventually do is find some actions appropriate to where we are now and who you are. What I want, without negating the value of those things, to do is turn the whole issue on its head from this dystopia that we find ourselves in into an ideal solution scenario. You may not understand, but please bear with me. The scenario that we've reached, having been cleansed and healed of our injuries and wounds of the present time, we have a situation where there are no banks at all. There are no national debts. There's no worthless paper or digital money. There's governance without a state. And there's trade between each other without usury. Again, there's words here that could be defined and we could talk about for ages. Usury is not understood, and we need to focus on that. We have to have a primary need focus and look at natural growth as an indicator to the correctness of anything that we do. We have a natural growth in life, in business, in societies, and in empires. And that's the ideal scenario. I'd like to just flip on the and indicate something about growth, because it's probably quite useful. I was taking it out, but let's talk about growth curves. For the mathematicians out there, and even I think most people understand that you have a normal growth curve and you have different growth curves. You have an exponential growth curve. And in our society, we have a thing called compound interest, which is related to debts. And we have interest on the interest if you haven't paid off all the interest. And the compound interest results in debts growing exponentially. Now, the only natural occurring thing that I'm aware of that has the same growth curve.
Sorry, 5 minutes, Brother Dawud, 5 minutes
okay,
left.
5 minutes, fine. The only natural occurring thing is cancer. So I'd say our business model at the moment has cancer. So let's just go on to the primary needs focus is food, shelter, and clothing. What this means and how do we get there? We can't legislate good behavior, but you can obey God. And if you do, you can expect generosity and hope. And if you don't, you can expect punishment, and we fear that. How do we behave and how we transact with each other can be the beginning of a positive climate change of human behavior. We must be free to choose our own means of exchange without any manipulated intermediary. This is usually sidelined in economic and this is usually sidelined in climate and environmental think tanks as something to be done to as something that is to be sidelined into monetary reform. But in the Quran, the only thing that Allah declares war against specifically is usury. Fazlin has analysed the Quran and extracted every mention of man's relation to responsibility for the environment. I'll just touch on 4 words as I get to the end. If we could extract 4 words that would give us common ground, they would be oneness, the understanding that everything is connected, Tawheed, Khalifa, which is responsibility or vice regency or our stewardship over the creation, Mizan, the balance, how things are kept in balance, and Fitra, the natural way. And I'd say if we looked at those 4 things as a beginning, if we got understanding of them, it would be a good foundation for going forward. From these 4 areas, we can check our initiatives. We can be mindful of their place in the whole affair. But currently, the business model of the world is out of balance and unnatural. I am a 60-year-old man with a life experience, but I want more Gretas. I want more people that can take the lead with their youthful folly and passion. In the early Islamic wars of defense, the generals were sometimes 17 years of age, and their shura, their council, were the 80-year-olds. And I'll just round off now. Where is the climate catastrophe? Around that portion of the divine light that is the spark that is in all of us. That is you. Around that spark of divine light are our bodies on loan for us for an allocated time. That is where the environment begins. It is not outside in the Peak District or to be observed. It's not just in the allotments. We are it. And as Michael Jackson so aptly said, I'm going to start with the man in the mirror. Now, if we conduct our own hypocrisy audit with regard to climate change, almost all of us could choose the path of depression and hopelessness. Rounding off now. Don't. We are the products of a gross imbalance. If you are sick of sickness, you are not sick. Your skills, your knowledge, your experience, your youthful folly all have a place in this struggle. Just find your place. Keep true, keep company, welcome success. But if you are planting that tree and you know the apocalyptic event is upon you, don't stop, don't flee, plant that tree. Assalamu alaikum. That's me done.
Thank you very much. We'll move straight on to Q&As. So the first question we have, Brother Dawud, is, can you explain what you mean by declaring war? What should this look like?
Well, I'm not going to explain specifically my ideas of what we need to do, but or if you think depends on how you feel you're under attack. Me, I think the immediate things is to work on my own hypocrisy audit. When I look outside, I realize the only place I can get water from is my tap. I haven't got a well. I haven't got any way of freeing myself from the dependency of the big supplier. My power as well is on grid. I haven't got solar and I haven't got wind. But although I've helped people get those things, quite often the living room of the carpenter who's making chairs for everyone is just old boxes. But I would start. So it's a personal thing that you have to see where you are. If you do see the dystopian world as having limitations on your own ability to satisfy your primary needs of food and shelter, I would say that we need to address them. Now, the war situation, I'm not thinking about a physical attack or a military action, but I am aware that if one creates a comfort zone, an ability to feed yourself and to drink in an area where people haven't done any preparation, then you've got to either have a system where you welcome people into your area or you defend yourself. Now, the answers to these problems are dependent on your own personal situation. My first fight is to get my own water from rain harvesting. I can't drill.
Okay, thank you. And time for just one more question. To what extent is responding to the climate emergency a personal responsibility, particularly as a Muslim, versus government authority responsibility?
Is that a written question? I need to just see that. Is that?
Yeah, it's written in Q&A.
In Q&A, so I am on the screen chat.
It's at the bottom of the...
Responding to the climate emergency a personal responsibility, particularly as a Muslim, versus government authority responsibility? You know, it is completely a personal responsibility to respond from it from the point of view of my indication that the climate emergency or as part of the environment starts with your own body and how you are responding. It is a personal responsibility. And as far as government and authority is concerned, they're questions. Who do we have over us? We have over us according to what's in our own hearts. If we change and we want in our hearts, if it can't be on our tongues and it can't be on our limbs, if we want success, we have to ask ourselves, who is governing us? Who is the authority over you? We have to empower people we trust to be the authority over us. And then our personal responsibility is actioned in creating a larger group of people who can actually do things together for success.
Okay. So, hang on.